At number 1, we have Strange Darling. This is a movie from 2024, pretty recent, that not a lot of people have seen, and I want to point people to it. I think this is something that is perfect for fall, perfect for the vibe of fall. It has that kind of feeling, that autumn colors to it, but it's a really unique serial killer movie. And if you like serial killer movies, this is going to be right up your alley.
The idea, the kind of risks a woman like me takes every time she agrees to have a little fun.
Never thought about it that way.
Of course you haven't. You're not a woman.
This is a perfect representation of how information should be doled out, because it is told in a way that completely keeps the audience in the dark as to what's happening or who people are. And I really enjoyed that, because this is a movie that could be easily very, very boring. It's a movie that's told in parts, but the parts are non-linear. So we start with like part 3, I think, I don't remember, and then it moves around between the different parts, keeping context from you. So when the movie starts off with a woman running away from someone in the woods without any context, the audience starts to assume certain things about certain people. And even if you're mostly correct, there's little twists and turns that the film takes that are very interesting because of that non-linear storytelling. Plus, it's gorgeous. It's shot on 35mm film, which keeps this kind of timeless quality and this richness to the image. That's going to help this down the line, considering it's a low-budget film, because it is done pretty low budget, and there is times when you can tell, but shooting on film actually does help distract you enough from that low budget. Check out Strange Darling.
How did I get so lucky tonight?
I know it isn't true. At number 2, we have Lords of Salem, which is Rob Zombie's best movie.
I really think that Lord's record is with me.
What do you mean? With you?
Every time I hear it, it's like...
Which is a film about witches and a witch's coven, which is fun, but it's also probably his most restrained film. There's a lot less yelling and
Tough guy. Think she'd suck my dick for a quarter and let me suck her.
horrible cussing and
First of all, f*** you!
than you'd expect in a Rob Zombie movie. But there's still some there. But this is a movie that is so much more restrained in what it's going for. For a lot of the movie, not much is going on in terms of Rob Zombie-isms. There's not a lot of blood and violence and gore and craziness. It's just like mystery. It's more of what you'd expect a traditional kind of bigger budget Hollywood horror picture to be like. But it has those Rob Zombie-isms that makes it really unique. Like the fact that he wants to continually cast his wife in the lead roles. Why? I don't know why. She's not that great.
Battle with temptation and choose to ride upon the goat.
But for the most part, this movie really does work because it is weird and it juxtaposes some really genuinely stunning images. It's probably his best looking movie with creepy and weird things. And again, the weirdness sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but it's stunning to look at. It's by far his best looking movie. There's a lot of really interesting visuals, really interesting creature designs, effects works. It's just a solid all-around movie that in the last 20 minutes brings about this ending. And if you're into horror or if you're into witch movies or that kind of witchcrafty things, I think you'd enjoy this one. It's pretty fun, honestly. I like it. At number 3, we have The Exorcist III, which I know a lot of people consider the original movie to be the scariest movie ever made, and then consider the sequels to just not exist. For the most part, you'd be right, but Exorcist 3 is actually a really solid horror film that almost has nothing to do with horror at all. In fact, it's very horrific, and it has this really dark atmosphere that looms over the entire film like this cloud, forcing our main character to kind of go a little bit insane because of this demonic presence that's just infecting everything.
Any signs of injuries, blood, lacerations?
That would be in the file.
It is not in the file. It is not.
But it's not a traditionally horror movie. There's not a lot of traditional scares in it. I mean, the opening scene is just church doors opening with a soundtrack and a girl screaming, and that's kind of one of the scariest parts of the film. There's just not a lot in the way of traditional scares, but it is such an effective atmospheric thriller. It's really straightforward in what it's trying to do, but it's so interesting and unique in the way it's presented.
You must get them to do that, Lieutenant. It's important. The Gemini is dead. No, I am not! I'm alive! I go on! I breathe! Look at me!
If you look at the original Exorcist film, it's mostly just like a fake documentary meant to give the audience this feeling of like, this is happening, could be real, this could be the person next door. But Exorcist III is so much more cinematic in the way that it approaches things, and it really draws things out, that it becomes an incredibly unique horror experience that I think you should check out.
The real terror is back. George C. Scott in William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist III.
Number 4 is The Blair Witch Project. Now, with this video, I wanted to kind of avoid giving out movies that everybody has seen or everybody knows about, like The Exorcist, for example, or The Thing, or The Shining. These big classic tentpole horror movies are ones that I kind of wanted to avoid. Now, to be fair, The Blair Witch Project is kind of a classic tentpole horror movie, and yet I don't think many people have seen it or really talk about it that much anymore. This was a watershed movie for found footage horror. It's one of the best found footage horror movies out there, too. This movie is still incredibly effective and really well done. It's not necessarily the scariest movie on this list. In fact, not much happens, because most of it's just a couple people being lost in the woods and kind of getting irritable with each other.
Well, you can't nap in the creek either.
Help! Please help us! Help us!
This is not the way to get out of here.
And then there's also may or may not be something else. There may or may not be a killer in the woods, and there may or may not be something evil, demonic, witch type thing in the woods. And it's incredibly vague, and I think that it works super well because of that fact. You don't really know what's going on. There's such a fear of the unknown in just everyday life, and Blair Witch Project tackles that so effectively by just having a couple people that are pretty relatable, just college students going out in the woods, and then they get lost. It's a relatable thing, and it's a relatable fear of getting lost in the woods. But I think what works even better is the execution of it. There's so many found footage films that I think go too far into making them cinematic. So many films, so many found footage films don't do that very well, but Blair Witch does. There's only 2 cameras the entire film. It's never cutting between multiple angles. It's never cutting to like spy cam footage or trail cam, nothing. It's one person has a camera and another person has a camera. One's black and white, one's in color, one has sound, one doesn't. So there's certain sequences when you're seeing things through the camera that doesn't have sound, but you're hearing the sound through the camera that does in a different spot. And it keeps things so much more interesting that way because it feels more real, because it is more relatable. And these people were actually in the woods, these actors, and they were actually being scared by the directors not telling them what was going on.
I'm hearing downstairs. Come on! I hear him downstairs! Come on! Josh!
And that fear is so much more palpable, and I really love it because of that. Now, of course, we can talk about the ending and if there was anything there or what was going on, but I think that's part of the fun too. So if you haven't seen it, please do.
Tell me where you are, Josh!
And finally, we have number 5, I Saw the Devil. This isn't a traditional horror movie at all. In fact, it's probably more of a thriller than anything, but it is one of the darkest and most depressing movies you will see. It's 2.5 hours of pure, straight, unadulterated misery.
운 좋다고 했죠. 예, 그랬죠. 너요? 내가 볼 때 아이씨는 너무 운이 없는 것 같아.
This is a movie about a serial killer who kills the wrong person, essentially. He kills the fiancé of this sort of FBI in South Korean type of guy, and that guy goes ballistic. He tries to find the serial killer, and once he does, he just haunts him, essentially. He follows him around, waits for him to do something despicable, and just beats on him. It's such a miserable experience, not just because it's incredibly violent and graphic and bloody, which it is, but it also does such a great job because of all of this at informing the audience on its message, which is essentially how far will you go to get revenge and what person will you become because of that. Is the cure worse than the symptom or worse than the disease? It's such a fantastic watch, even if you'll probably only watch it once, because it is, like I said, just so miserable that it can really affect your mood, honestly. I watched it and didn't want to do anything for like 3 days, I'll be honest. It's just too much, it really is. There's so much about it that's just seared into my memory. Like, my brain will not let go some of the images of this film, and I think that is something super special about it. So if you haven't seen I Saw the Devil, warning, but also see it.